So as it turns out, the app that we were using in class the other night is available online for use on a computer. You don't need a phone. And the name of the app is VerseLocker. So that's what you want to type into your browser and do a search. And then what you want to do is you want to find this one right here with a green, I don't know, little plant growing out of a green box. You don't want this one with the lock and the heart in it. That's for the mobile version only. So once you found this, we'll just click on that. And the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to sign up. So up here in the top corner, we have our sign up button. We're going to click that, and you give it your email address. So I'm going to start a new account for this video. Make sure I got that right. Go ahead and put in, probably don't want that. First name, last name. Apparently these fields are optional. And then we're just going to give it a password. I'm going to hit save for that. I'm not a robot. And agree with the privacy policy right here. And then go ahead and register. And it brings you right in the first time. And there's some verses already here, but we'll be changing those. Alright, so I said the first thing that we're going to do is pick our own verses, but really what we want to do is we want to look at this home page. And you'll notice across the top of the screen here that we have a home page, we have a collections page, the community, and an add button. And we'll go through these in order. So first, if we select the home page, this brings us to really all the functionality of the app. We have all our verses where we can see them all in one place. Bible tracker, leaderboard, progress, donate. That's the only way to pay for the app. It's free. If you want to give money because you love it, that's how you do it. They have a podcast. I'm not too into that myself. And you can work with friends in here. We don't have that set up. They have a blog, etc. Let's do this first though. Real quick, let's just click all verses. And you'll see that it brought us back to that original screen where they've put in 4 verses. Down below you can pick your own verse. Again, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to go back to the home. And I want to show you one more screen in here, and that's the settings screen. So if we come into settings, you'll see you've got your username, and you can select these preferences. If you want to get this email, we'll turn that off. If you don't want to be included, you can leave this on display new badge alerts or turn it off. When you achieve certain things, like if you've memorized 25 verses, you get a badge. You can decide to have that or not. I'd say just for now, turn them all off. You know where they are. They're in the settings. You can use different modes. So they have auto dark mode off. Didn't seem to change anything on my screen. We'll just put auto dark mode for now. And here's where you can change the voice. So there's, I believe, 3 choices. You have an English male, an English female, or a British English male. That's what I use, but you can always change that. And if you've made any changes, we'll hit, which I have, you'll hit save changes here. Alright, it says across the top here, your changes have been saved. Coming farther down, you can change your password. We don't really want to do that. So that's all your settings. Pretty basic. So coming back again to this home page, we've already gone through where all the verses live as a single collection, and collections will make more sense in a minute, but that's just seeing them all just in a pile. We don't want to do that. We want to make some collections, and I'm going to show you the collections that we made, or that we will be making in the next class. So if you want to go ahead and make them, you can be ahead of the curve. And all we do is we go up to this collections button right here, and the first time it's going to say you haven't created any. Create one. So we're going to select create one, and this is just the way I set it up. So I'd set it up the way I do, so we're on the same page, and if you want to set it up differently later, you can always change anything later once it makes more sense. We're going to do create collection. You have two choices: create a collection or download collections. So for now we're going to just create our own collection, and we're going to call it Pieces, and we can change the color. We'll just leave it blue for now, and we're going to create that, and you're going to see now we have one collection. We're going to create a second collection. We're going to call this one Current Study, and I recommend changing the color. They stand out better and contrast one to the other when they're not all blue or all orange or whatever. And then the third one that we're going to create, and we're only going to do 3 for now, we're going to call capital A, the number 1, period, space, capital A for archive. And we'll give that a distinct color from the other and create it. Now you see it's not in the order that we created them. It's reversed them. It's put each one as we created it at the top. Not a big deal, because now we have a third button. Originally we had the create collection button, we had the download collection button, but now you'll see we have this reorder button. And all we have to do is select that. Changes the screen a little bit, and we're going to click and drag and put Pieces on the top, Current Study in the middle, A1 archive at the bottom, and then we're going to save those changes. And now we've got our collections in the order that we want them in. And so the current study that we chose was Philippians 4, verses 4 through 7. And so you can come up here in the top right corner, which we're not going to do, but you can come up here and select this add button and add a verse. Anytime you see that there, that's one way to do it. But another way to do it, if you know where you want a verse to live, and think of a collection as a particular shelf on your bookshelf. Okay? So we have 3 shelves on our bookshelf: Pieces, Current Study, and A1 Archive. Well, we want our Current Study as a whole to live in the Current Study shelf. So I'm going to select that, click on that, and it's currently empty. We can add a verse, so we're going to do that. This is our first addition. We're not going to do existing verses. This isn't something we've already saved elsewhere and we're trying to move it. We're going to add our first set of verses. We're going to click New Verses, and you can scroll through this and try and find the book. You'll notice that all the Old Testament books, at least on my screen, they might be different on yours, they're gray, and the New Testament are in blue. But it's easier to just start typing the name. And so it's going to be, we're going to click on Philippians, and we're going to pick our chapter. It was chapter 4. Now, I want to pause here for a second And I want you to note something, that if say, we're not doing it, but if say we were going to pick verses 15 through 17, you might be tempted, and I do this all the time, to try and click on 1:5. That's not going to work. That's not 15. What this app does is it always lays out in full all the possible verses that exist in the chapter for pick a starting verse. So it's always going to be 1 through something. In this case, it's 1 through 23. So our first verse is verse 4. When we select that, it changes, and you'll see the way that it changed is now the first verse is 5. Actually, it's not. Correction. The first verse is to select this button here. And if we do this, it's just going to give us verse 4, like it says. But we could, if we wanted 4 and 5, we could select the 5. We're not going to do that. We want 7. So this is our ending verse. Oops, sorry about that. Clicked the wrong button. Just like it says right here, ending verse. So we're going to select 7, and it's automatically going to put the text in. Now, I'm using the King James Version. You can see that right here. We can change that and there's a lot of choices in here. Let's see, is the NRSV? Yep, this is the one we use at the church. But whatever you like, if there's one in here that you prefer, I always use the King James only because it's poetic, but that can be changed later as well. Let's say that you made a mistake. You didn't want 4 through 7, you wanted it 4 through 9. You could select this button right here, this update verse text, and I'll select it. And what's it going to do? It's going to change, it's going to put a button under here. That's not super obvious, but it changed it. And so I could go in here to change verses, and I'm going to just pick them the same way again. And at that point I would hit update verse text. I'll just do that. And now it says it's been updated. It didn't change because we didn't change it. Alright, so these next buttons below, you always want include in collections toggled on. So off, on. And when it's on, you'll have your custom collection showing here. And it's already got a checkbox in current study. The reason that is we went onto that bookshelf before we chose to make a verse. So it already knew that we wanted it there. But you could actually put it in all three. We're not going to do that. But that's one nice feature in this software, is that you might later, as you develop your use of the app, want to have a particular verse in more than one location. For now, we're just going to leave this in current study. Smart line breaking, I always turn this on. We don't want to split this into 4 individual verses. We do want the reference location, because that's part, we want to know where this passage is later when we've learned it. And my recommendation here in this little pull down menu here is that you don't choose after the verse or before the verse, but rather before and after. So what that's going to do is when you're listening to the passage, it's going to say Philippians 4 verses 4 to 7, say the passage, and then it's going to say it again. So it's a constant reinforcement of where the passage lives in the biblical text. And the last thing is to add now. So we'll do that. Your verses have been added. add another verse, or click here to view all your verses. We're not going to do that, but we're going to go back to the collection. And when we do, you'll see we're in the current study collection, and we have our new passage here. Let's pop back over to our home tab just for a second and go to the All Verses tab. Now remember, there were some verses sitting in there when you started the account. If we go now, those default verses have disappeared, and we just have our Philippians 4 through 7. Like I said, this is kind of like the entire library of verses that you have chosen so far. But what we're going to do is we're going to go back and look at this in our collections. We'll go back, and you can click right here on Current Study, and it brings up this screen back where we were. Now, we're not going to really worry about these buttons here across the top for right now, because they won't make too much sense until we have multiple passages. What we do want to do is we want to select the practice button right here. And this is where you do all your study of the passages. So across the top we have blur, words, initials, type. We'll go back to blur to start. Now, when you scroll this screen like I'm doing here, it would be nice. You'll notice that this top bar that says Verse Locker Home Collections Community, it's what's called persistent. So it never moves. If you scroll your screen, it stays there. It will go away, but it stays in place. Whereas the blur, words, initials, type bar, it goes off of the page. And so if you're ever not sure where you are, you probably need to scroll up and down, because you can't see the whole thing usually at once. So in blur mode, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, and this is persistent, you'll see this blur button here. That's how you blur the text. And what's the point? You're learning the passage, you feel like you know it a little bit better than you used to, and you click blur, and it hides some of the words. And now down below you'll see the buttons changed. Next to the blur button you also have a show button. So if we keep selecting blur, it strips more and more of the text away until it's literally taken it all. If we then hit the show button, or any point along the way, it brings it back. So if I've blurred it 3 times and then I hit show, it brings it back. If I hover, when some are blurred, if I can't remember a word and I hover over it, it shows me the word that's hiding. So that's basically how blur works. Now words, so let's go back here. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say rejoice. Okay, so if we're in words, we're going to try and get those in the right order. Okay, what was it? Rejoice in the Lord. If I get it wrong, it'll just turn red. And it was always. And again, I say rejoice. All right. So that's how that works. And you can, I believe, let me see. I thought there was a start over button, but maybe not. What's this do? Oh, that's to share. That's a share button. We're not going to do that. All right. So there's a settings button right here. Edit verse, turn on shuffle. No, we don't want to do that either. So we'll just go out of there. Not a big deal. We've come back in. It started over. So yeah, you can just leave, come back to start over in that field in the words option. Now what initials does, and what this is going to point out, when we save this passage, one of the toggles that we chose was smart line breaking. And what that did is it set up this screen. So this is rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. I'm sorry, and again I say rejoice. It's broken it up a little bit. If we did not select that, this would just be one massive paragraph of letters. Not really laid out like, I don't know, what you might call almost like a poetry view. And I just think it's much easier to look at it this way than having it all strung together as a single massive garble of letters. But again, as you're learning it, you can look at this and see how you do. The last one is type. Now, in type, the most important thing to recognize is that there is this button right here. Initials mode, and or if you click on it, it says normal mode. And if I start typing, rejoice in the Lord always. Alright, I'm only typing one letter. So we are actually in initials mode. This is a little counterintuitive. It says normal mode down there, but we're not in that. We're in initials mode. So that button is telling you what you're not in. It's telling you what you could be in if you were to select it. If you want normal mode, you would have to type out the words in full, rejoice in the Lord always. It'd take forever. So I really like this initials mode that we're in, where you only type the first letter. If you can show the next word and keep doing that, you can start over. There's a lot of toggles in this particular screen. So as you're going along and learning the passage, I like to start just listening. I don't even necessarily look at it. And down here, there's 3 buttons down below. I did it again. Sorry about that. These 3 buttons here: study, back to collection, and listen. All right. So back to collection is different than collections. Collections at the top will take you to that view where you see all your bookshelves and you can pick one. If you hit back to collection here, it'll go back to this particular shelf. If you hit study, this is interesting. This is baked into the app. So if we hit study, we get 2 choices. Now if we hit Philippians 4, it's going to give us a window with the entire chapter. And that's kind of nice when you're just learning a particular chunk like we are, 4 through 7. You can see it in context. Selecting outside of the box, it goes away. But you also have Matthew Henry's commentary, and it'll take you right to the chapter, and it's a free commentary, ancient commentary that is pretty good, and you have it covers the entire Bible. So that's just a nice little bonus feature. Now, if we listen to it,
Philippians 4 verses 4 to 7. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice.
Okay. Down here in this bar, we have a go back to the beginning button. We have a play button, which becomes a pause button. We have the loop button, that when green means it's going to loop. So when it gets to the end of the passage, it's going to say it again. and again and again. And I'm not actually even sure. What is this? Oh, that's like moving you along. I don't see any need to use that. What I like to use, though, when I'm first trying to memorize, this button here pulls you down and allows you to either slow down or speed up the rate at which the speaker is speaking. And I have found 0.5 is just way too slow. But 0.75 is almost like a meditative, slow, Lectio Divina style reading of the text. So I will go between 0.75 when I'm learning and just 1x or normal speed. I typically don't go faster. I haven't found much use for that. But if we go to 0.75 and we hit play.
Understanding shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Philippians 4 verses 4 to 7.
So that's that. So there's a lot of ways that you could practice a passage, and everyone's going to have their own favorite. I'll just tell you what works for me. So what I like to do on something that's just a couple verses, in this case we have 4 verses, is I like to listen to it on 0.75 speed when nobody's bothering me, and just let it play over and over, and just pay attention to the words and start to pick up on, like, what was the first word that started the whole passage. Maybe that's all you get on one pass through, so the next time you know that first word. And then I might notice that there are certain words that repeat. I might notice that there's a word that I thought I knew after 3 times through, but I got it wrong on the 4th time through, and so that maybe is going to be a sticking point for me. I then will go, I will go into this blur mode where I can see the passage and read it. And again, you have that listen button here. So you can be in blur mode and listen to it. You can be in words and listen. That's probably not that useful because it takes so long to click through. But it's certainly useful over here in initials, where you can listen to it, and it's a little bit more difficult than when you can see the words in full. So really, that's where I listen with my eyes closed. I listen with blur mode, where I can see all the words. Maybe I could blur them out and listen, that'd be fine. And I listen to it in initials mode. And then from there, you start to get it pretty good. You can practice in words mode, or jump all the way to type mode. And so that's my process for going through a passage. I really want to show you before we get to class, because I think it will be useful, is we're going to go back in at the top here, and we're going to go back into the collections that we made, and we're going to just hit the view all button so they come up on the screen. So we've put our passage in current study, which is the shelf that it lives on for now. Eventually, you're going to know the passage pretty well. And when that happens, you're going to want to move it to A1 Archive. And why that name? Well, the logic for me is I can put quite a few chunks of scripture in that collection. Fill up that shelf, if you will. And when you do, you can play all those verses one after another with a play all button. And you might have 10 minutes worth of scripture that you know over the passage of time, and be able to sit there and meditatively pray all those scriptures with them playing for 10 minutes. And it's just a great use of the app. Now, we only have the one passage, so I can't show you what that would look like in the archive. And the reason it's A1 is because then I can do A2 archive, A3 archive, and go, I don't know, as high as I can go. Probably go up to A9 or A10, and then go to B1 archive, B2. Eventually, I might have so much scripture that I've memorized in the book of Colossians, I might go back and find all those Colossians passages and add them to a Colossians collection. I might make a shelf just for Colossians and then be able to go through all those passages. So there's just different ways to build, and that is going to take some time. But I can show you how that would work to play all the passages on a current or in a current collection by going into this pieces collection and explaining what this is for. So the time might come where we as a class or you as an individual want to memorize a much larger passage. And listening to 12 verses from beginning to end, it's a big chunk of information. And getting a real good grip on that is not that easy. And so you might want to break that down into pieces or chunks of that. So we're going to do that for the Philippians 4 through 7 right now. That may not be necessary because it's not that long of a passage, but it's still useful practice. So we're going to add verses into our pieces collection, new verses. We're going to pick Philippians, which happens to be right at the top because it was the last one we did. And we're going to go chapter 4, verse 4, just verse 4. Include in collections. I always do smart line breaking, even though it's probably not necessary for one verse. Our reference location before and after is already set up for us. And I'm going to hit add now. And then it says your verse has been added. I'm going to pick Philippians chapter 4, verse 5. Just verse 5. Pieces, smart line breaking. Add now. Okay, Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, just verse 6. And just do this really quick. And I keep going up to the top for some reason. 4, starting verses 7, just that verse. And just to make a point, I'm going to do 2 more. I'm going to do starting verses 4, ending verses 5. Smart line breaking. Don't split it. I never use that. And then I'm going to do Philippians 4, starting on verse 6, finishing on verse 7. Smart line breaking. Okay, now we're going to go to the collection. So we're in the pieces collection. And we have these Philippians 4:4, and then I'm going to sort these because I don't like this sorting order that it put it in. And it's doing it. You see why it's doing it. 4:4 comes before 4:5, but it doesn't in the logic of the way I want to study. So now we can use this sort button that sits at the top of our collection when there's all these verses. And we're going to do custom order. And you'll see the way it came in the custom order was the way that I created them. So it automatically applied my logic. But I'm actually going to change this, and I can. So I'm going to have 4, verse 4, then verse 5, and then the 2 together, verses 4 and 5. Then 6, then 7, then 6 and 7. And then, once I was really good with 4, 4, and 5, and 4, 6, and 7, let me save the changes here, I would go into my current study and do the whole chunk from there. All right. So, if we hit the play button here, so you see we can listen. There's a listen button on what we'll call the card. We can go into the practice mode, and there's always listen buttons and all of those options, the blur and the words and the initials and the type. But we also have a play button here at the top of the screen, right under pieces. And if we do that,
Philippians 4 verse 4, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Philippians 4 verse 4. Philippians 4 verse 5, let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Philippians 4 verse 5. Philippians 4 verses 4 to 5, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. Philippians 4 verse 4, rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Philippians 4 verse 4.
How to get it to stop, I'm not sure.
Philippians 4 verse 5, let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Philippians 4 verse 5.
I'm going to just go into practice mode and then go back to the collection. That worked. That killed it. So yeah, there was no, even though I hit the play button again at the top, it didn't stop it. But just going into the card with the practice button and then back out, that stopped it. So now I wouldn't be inclined to actually use that in this context. This is for learning very small chunks. But again, imagine you have this whole passage, Philippians 4, 4 through 7, and maybe you have Colossians 2, 1 through 10, and maybe you have Romans 8, 31 through 39, and you've put those all, you've got those really memorized, and you've put those all in that A1 archive, and you're going to listen to that. You might have made a decision to listen to that once every 4 days until you just really have it so well that you feel like you could never forget it. That would be a place where you would go into that archive and have all those chunks of scripture, hit this play button at the top, and it would take you through them, and you know them, but you're refreshing your memory. And so that's what that play button at the top would do. Now, eventually, we're going to move on from this Philippians 4, 4 through 7 passage, and you're going to take it out of current study, and you're going to move it over to A1 archive. You're also not going to want this mess here in the pieces shelf. So at that point, what you would do is you could select all, and now you get some more options. You have delete selected, and I'm going to hit that, and it makes you type the word delete because it doesn't want you to undo a bunch of stuff. Now, this I failed to recognize for a while. If I delete that, it's going to delete from the collection. But let me not do this real quick, and let me show you something. If we go to home and we go to all verses, they're all sitting here as well, not just in the collection because they're part of our verses. Coming back here, selecting all, delete selected. I'm going to type delete. If I do not check this box right here, delete from my account also, what it's going to do is it's going to empty it out of this pieces shelf, this collection. But if you go back to that home all verses, they're all going to be sitting there. And you really don't need these pieces once you have the chunk. You want them gone. So you want to type delete, and you also want to delete from my account also. And when you hit delete, pieces is empty for the next passage to break down as you wish. And if we go to home all verses, that's gone. remaining is our Philippians 4:4-7, which is in our A1 archive. Now, the last thing I want to show you, and I'm going to do it from that collection in current study, is how would you move this if you wanted to get it out of current study and get it into the archive. What you're going to do is you're going to, well, let's see what happens. I don't know if this will work. I know one way to do it, but maybe there's more. If I select this, what are my options? There's probably a way to do it up here. I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to go in and go out. So it's unselected. If you hit this edit button right here, it changes the screen a little bit and it gives you this advanced editor button. And if you select that, it takes you back to that main screen where you create a verse. And this is where you would go to your custom collections down here and you would put it in the archive, remove it from current study, and hit save. And now current study is empty and it's been put over into A1 archive. And then you're on to your next passage. So this is way more than enough information to get kicking around in the app and get comfortable with it and come up with questions and feel free to ask me any questions. I'm gonna probably after our next class we'll talk about, I might sit at the church before or after services and make myself available for people for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever, if they have questions, so that people don't have to wait a whole month with their questions. Maybe we can set up a group email for the people that are actually attending. I can break those people out into a group and we can ask questions in that email and I can do updated videos, etc. But hope that's helpful. Thank you.